this channel may not be purchased for your jurisdiction. Finally, the information contained here is not guaranteed to be up to date. Therefore, the information contained on this channel cannot replace the advice of competent legal counsel licensed in your respective state/jurisdiction.
Hello, and welcome to Lawless Leechie'S broadcast. Tonight, I will be talking about my personal parenting tips to secure a good relationship with your child. You know, like I have with my daughter. The goal is to be your child's favorite parent. There are a few key items to becoming your child's favorite parent. I'm going to cover those now for your information. First of all, you need to make sure you cause scenes in front of them whenever your ex is around, like you see me doing here while my daughter watched from my yard. My ex, Ned, is a terrible father, and I've twice tried to replace him. This number 3 guy seems to be working out for that so far. Anyway, here you see me jumping up and down in the photo while my awful ex came over and told me he was no longer going to continue paying for my health insurance once our divorce was final. Like I told you, he's a liar and a deadbeat father. What father wouldn't pay for his ex-wife's health care coverage just because he divorced her? Pfft. Now, when it comes to your child's school, this is very important. Never allow your child's father to take your child to their first day of school. That is your time to be with your child, not his. Take this picture, for example. It's a picture of me at my daughter's school, her first day. That deadbeat dad Ned tried to take my daughter for her first day of 4th grade. Ha! Like I said before, you have to take charge of your child's visitation schedule. Oh, and don't worry about the court. The court lets women get away with a lot more, and they usually won't do anything to you even when they do catch you. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I will cover my tips and tricks for stalking and harassment in another segment. One of the most important factors is talking to your child about your ex. It's important to make sure they understand what they're dealing with so they're prepared for their visitations. You wouldn't want your daughter enjoying her time with her father because then you might risk your position as her favorite. After all, this is about winning the popularity contest. Not this good parent people like to chatter about. So make sure you ask them a lot of questions about their time with the father. And if there are any opportunities to throw things like, "Oh, is that all you got from him?" Or maybe he took her to McDonald's for lunch, you could say something like, "Oh, so he took you to McDonald's again." The key here is to make negative comments by using your tone of voice and some creative sentences. You can use this to illustrate what a loser that father is. It's simple. You could say, "Oh, so he took you to McDonald's?" Or you could use this opportunity to show your daughter how little she means to her father by saying, "Oh, so your father took you to McDonald's again?" You see what I did there? Anyway, you get the picture. Moving on. Here, you see me doing the same thing with my son, except since he's much older, I just decided to tell him what an a-hole his father is outright. The best part is that I convinced my son to only hear my side of anything that ever happens between my ex and me. I play the victim better than anyone I've ever met. If someone isn't paying attention to facts, I can easily appear to be a terrible victim of their abuse. So it's important to make sure your kids will never be willing to hear anything but what you tell them about the situation. Just make sure you are loud and pushy enough so that they won't dare cross you by sneaking over to their father's house to spend time with him. If it should happen, just make sure you remain in constant contact with your child so that they never forget where their loyalties lay. After all, this is about winning, not about co-parenting. Co-parenting is for morons. Next, whenever your child is with their father, make sure you send the police over for well checks on your child. Like you see here in this picture of this police officer and my daughter. I tried to send them to Ned's house at least a few times per week to make sure my daughter had as much anxiety as possible whenever she was with her father. See that negative reinforcement? One time, Ned told me that my plan didn't work, and the police officer didn't wake up my daughter at 10 o'clock at night for my well check. So I just sent them back over again the next night and told them she was suicidal. That worked just fine. And as long as you constantly remind your child that the stress they are under being at their father's home is what's causing them to feel sad and anxious, they will keep feeling that feeling over and over again. It's wonderful. Eventually, you can get your child to believe they are really suicidal, but you're going to need to send the police out to your ex's place on a regular basis. Stalking them helps too, but I'm not prepared to discuss that with my pitches on today's broadcast. This next one is important. Make sure you deny visitations to your ex as much as you can. Like you see here in this picture, my daughter was only 10 years old and her father was in the hospital recovering from major surgery. He wanted to see her, so I made sure she didn't go. All I had to do was pull up to her bus stop and yell at her to get into my truck. Of course she will do what I tell her because, remember, I'm the victim here. Now, once you get your child into your car, you can start reminding them of all the things that they really wanted to do with you, so they didn't really want to go with the father anyway. This trick works best with younger children. If you start when they're young, you can keep it going as they grow older. Trust me. My last tip for today is a big one. It is very important that you try to replace your child's father as soon as you know you're headed for divorce. I made a few attempts. Here is one that lasted a long time. This Dave was a good replacement, for a while anyway. My kids loved him, and I managed to get my daughter to spend a Father's Day celebrating with him and not her own father. But he didn't want to support me. He wanted me to work. He also kept saying things were turning up missing at his place, and some of his friends said too whenever we visited their places. Just because these things happen to be things I expressed a desire to take doesn't mean I'm a stealer. So, he wouldn't marry me. Here's my new one. He's a real keeper. He doesn't force me to get a job. He supports me. He appreciates my value as a woman. See, ladies, you don't need an education. You just need a man who will support you so you don't have to work. Well, that's all for tonight. Join me again next time when I review the best ways to stalk and harass your ex. I will also be covering social media in that segment also. Have a wonderful evening.